Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since '01. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out investformore.com. Hi, everyone. It's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More. Welcome to another podcast. Today, we've got a great guest. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with him, Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets. Josh Dorkin, I think, officially started Bigger Pockets, but Brandon is a huge part of their success and why they're so big right now. Brandon, thanks for being on the show. Great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Mark. Thanks for having me on. This will be fun. That was a great intro. I don't know. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I know I used to be a guest blogger for Bigger Pockets, as are many, very good investors. And you helped me a lot with getting started in that process. So you were a big part of helping me get started in the online real estate world. So I appreciate that. And Bigger Pockets is doing great now. It was one of the first websites I first found when I looked for investing online. But you got started in real estate when you were very young. I think, were you 21, 22 when you bought your first flip?
I was. Yeah, I was a 21-year-old kid, didn't know anything about real estate, didn't know anything. I told my real estate agent, I said, hey, it wasn't even, she was a sister of a friend, and she was a real estate agent, and we were bowling. And I said, yeah, well, do you know any good rental properties in the area? I need a house to rent. Do you know any rental apartments or anything? She goes, well, why do you want to rent a place? Why not just buy a place? And I'm like, because I'm 21 years old and stupid, and kids don't buy a property. And she's like, let's just look at a few properties, see if it's something that we can make happen and maybe you can afford. And sure enough, it worked out. We found a cheap house, bought it, fixed it up, lived in it for almost a year, and then sold it and made a really nice profit. And it was like 20 grand. And we were like, my wife and I, we just got married during that time, and we're like, wow, this is like the greatest money we ever made. And so we decided that we'd jump into real estate kind of full time. And I quit my job at that point, jumped in and started flipping houses, started buying rentals. And that's kind of how I got started.
Nice. What were you doing at that point? What was your job?
So I was working the overnight shift at a group home for like developmentally disabled adults. And so I showed up at work at 8:00. I got off at 8:00 in the morning. So I worked a 12-hour shift. I think it was 4 days a week. And I got to sleep for about 5 hours every night. Like I don't have to be there. It was almost like, So it was like, I'd watch like the Flip That House and all the flipping shows for the first few hours on TV. And then when all the clients went to bed, I'd just sleep for like 4 or 5 hours and then go home. And that's what kind of got me excited about the flipping stuff. And I started fixing up the house. And so that's what I was doing. I was making minimum wage, I think, maybe just slightly above that, and got started.
Nice. Now, when you first bought that house, did you just get a regular loan? Was it a bank conventional loan? How'd you finance that property?
Yeah, it was, I don't even think the same loan products around anymore, because this was 2007, right as the market was about to crash. Or maybe I bought it in 2006. Yeah, something like that. It was right before the market crashed. I bought it during the peak of the market. And so there were a lot of like crazy loan products out there. And so I got I think it was like a 5% down or 3% down loan, pretty much the exact same as the FHA loan today, like an FHA or something like that. So I did that. And then for the repair costs, I borrowed the money from my dad and mom. And I said, hey guys, I need up 20 grand to fix this up. Can I borrow it? I'll pay you back and I'll pay you interest. And they said, sure. And so I used the money from them to fix it up. And when I sold it, paid them back. And it's kind of my start with creative financing.
Nice. I have a lot of people that ask me and kind of concerned about getting the money to start. If you buy a flip or a rental property, you need 20% down now, almost for sure, if you go with a conventional loan. And they know people that have money. Their parents might have money, their family, but they don't want to ask for it. What's your take on that situation? Asking for money from your family, from your friends? Is that a good idea, or is it just depend on your situation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it does depend on your situation, like the relationship that you have. My dad is pretty entrepreneurial. He likes business stuff and he's always dreamed about it, but never really done it. So in a way, it was a way of us kind of working together almost, so our relationship helped with that thing. That said, a lot of relationships don't. I mean, when you borrow money from somebody, Dave Ramsey's fond of saying, that you're enslaved to them. And I kind of agree. Like, when I borrowed that money, it was always, when are you going to sell that house? So what's the exit strategy? Like, there's always like this, he's my boss kind of thing when you borrow money. There's like a servant slave kind of attitude or a employer-employee relationship. It just gets weird, right? And there's no real good way around that necessarily other than, buy an incredible deal that you're not going to lose money. Because if you lose grandma's money, Thanksgiving dinner is going to be really awkward, right? So like, if you're going to borrow money from family or friends, make sure that they can afford to lose it. Don't borrow from somebody who's poor, that if you use their money, then they would lose it all and go, bankrupt if you lost their money, especially when you're first getting started. I mean, there's a good chance that you won't do very well on your first one. Secondly, I would say, yeah, again, so first, make sure the deal is just solid and a great deal. Secondly, treat it like any other business relationship. Pretend you're not related and, get contracts, sign paperwork, do everything as close to possible, as official as you can, and try to keep it by the book. That way it keeps people honest on both sides. And then, I would say pay them back no matter what happens. Even if, like, let's say you borrow money for a flip, and let's say that first one wouldn't have worked out for me. What if I had lost all my money on it? Or, like I had to sell it for what I had into it and I owed 20 grand. I mean, I would pay back my dad no matter what happened. If I had to go work a double shift or work 2 jobs just to do that, I will always be the person that will pay back no matter what. That way they're always going to get what they came for. So,
right. No, I think that's great advice. And one thing I always try and tell people, even if it's your dad, your mom, and they're willing to do a handshake deal with you, I always say put it in writing. You always want to put everything in writing, just for the simple fact you might forget exactly what the terms are. Not always, but I borrow money from my sister and I've borrowed money from her for years. And if I didn't have a piece of paper saying exactly what the terms were, there's no way I'd remember exactly what the interest rate was or everything. And you don't want to get in that argument later on about, oh, well, it's 7%. No, it's 6%. And then you wreck a relationship and you wreck your business relationship over something silly like that. So yeah, always put in writing. Pretend like you don't know the person when you're doing the deal. And I think that helps.
Yeah, very, very much so.
So you got your first rental property and that was a duplex. You lived in one side, right? And then rented out the other.
Yeah. So what I did is after the first house that we bought, we fixed it up and sold it. Then I moved into the duplex. And so that was the first rental-ish, because all of a sudden I was homeless, right? I had no house. I ended up actually living in my in-laws for like a month or something like that because we had nowhere to go. And then I bought a duplex, and I lived in one half, rented the other half out. The great part about that was, our mortgage payment was $620 a month or something like that, and the property, the other half, rented for $650 a month. So we were living for free. I mean, granted, there were, there's expenses, a lot of things that add up over time. But I mean, for me, I was handling all my own maintenance. I was handling my own management. When something went wrong, I could take care of it. And so that was an incredible way to get started, because that's what I call house hacking, because you're kind of like taking advantage of that cool. Low down payment when you live in the property. You can take care of the things. It's investing on training wheels, right? It's like learning to invest, but you have training wheels on. And I love that strategy.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing too, when you're house hacking, like you said, I stole that term from you too. I wrote an article on it a few weeks ago.
Nice. I'm trying to make that go nationwide.
Yeah, right.
Be a thing.
You're getting rent as soon as you buy it. So when you try and qualify for another loan, that rent will show up quicker on your taxes and you can show you're making money from it. So I think that'll help you qualify for properties quicker than if you're just buying a single family house and living there and you can't rent it till you move out. So there's a lot of advantages to buying the multifamily.
Yeah, there really are. I love that. I tell everybody to do that.
Yeah. I love it. I personally, all my rentals are single families, but I see the advantage of when you're first starting out, it's a huge advantage.
It is, especially young people first starting out, especially if you've got the flexibility, you can do it. It can really be a good way to get started. Now, granted, there are areas where multifamily don't work as well, and I know your area is one of them. There just aren't as many multifamilies as there are in my area, and I don't know what that is, but I know certain parts of Colorado, and I've a lot of areas just have not as many multifamilies. So it just you got to look around at your market and see what's there.
Right. Yeah. Our cap rate in Colorado is like 5%. It's crazy. You're losing money on a multifamily is I don't understand. I guess there's too many investors here, but
Yeah.
it's
I do. I do have a buddy who works for Bigger Pockets, Scott. He bought a duplex in Denver. And so what he did was, because he is an owner occupant, he's able to take advantage of the whole, what is it? Not HUD. Okay, so HUD houses, they have that exclusion, right? So investors can't bid for the first, 10 days, 20 days, whatever it is they put.
15 days. Yep.
Yeah. So he was, but he's not an investor. He was an owner occupant, and it was a duplex HUD property. So he went in there, and all the investors couldn't bid on it. The only ones bidding were other homeowners, but most homeowners don't think like that. They don't want a duplex. That's just annoying for them. So he snagged an incredible deal. He's living for free right now in Denver, one of the most expensive cities in America. And he's doing it like in this great neighborhood because he's got tenants that pay $2,000 a month for their rent. It's really just, I mean, so it does work if you can find the right deals. You can get in there. He took a year for him to find that, but yeah, there are ways. But yeah, anyway, yeah, house hacking. I love that.
Yeah, no, I have a HUD listing coming up in Loveland because I'm a HUD listing broker too.
Oh yeah,
and it's a duplex and it's not listed yet. But I mean, it's really rare to see those HUD duplexes come up for sale. But when they do, like you said, it's a huge advantage for an owner occupant to rent out the other side because most investors aren't going to want to live in the house they're investing in. But that's awesome. After you got your first duplex, you just built on that like crazy. So you lived there about a year.
Yep.
Then rented it all out, then kept buying more and more.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started what happened is that, this is 2007, 2008-ish at this point. And I started just buying houses to flip. I'd fix them up. And I spent, a lot of time. I did all of my work myself at the beginning because I was, learning how to be handy. And I was, I kind of enjoyed that. So my wife and I would fix up the houses. We'd bring our buddies over and grab pizza, paint a room. And we did it ourselves. And that was a terrible idea because what happened is, the market changed. We spent 9 months on our first flip, like our first big flip. We spent 9 months on it. And in that time, the market just kept going worse and worse and worse. So by the time we got it on the market, I couldn't sell it for what I wanted to make a good profit. And so if I could have sold it and broke even probably, but everybody was, like running like a chicken with their head cut off in 2008. And so what we ended up doing was just sticking a renter in it and, renting it out. And it actually worked out pretty well. Like we were like, oh, this isn't too bad. We had the one rental already, the duplex. So we rented the house out. The family moved in there, paid on time. They paid the entire amount that we owed the hard money lender. And then we refinanced it into a long-term 30-year fixed mortgage now. And we still own it today. And that's kind of how I picked up a lot of the rentals. We're just trying to do flips that didn't work out.
Nice. Yeah. I'm still flipping myself. And even after doing it for 14, 15 years, I've got a property I've held on to for a year because I've got a contractor issue and it never ends. It's crazy. How many rental units are you up to now?
I think I'm at 43 units spread out over about a dozen properties. And so it's a mix. There's a 24 unit. There's like a 5, a 3, a few duplexes, and then the rest single family. So there's like a nice mix in there. Nice.
And now the 24 unit, you use seller financing to buy that one, right?
I did, yeah. Well, I actually used 4 different financing methods, and that was a fun project that this is where you'll never read a book on how to buy, like how somebody should buy this kind of do this thing. Like this is not like a guru strategy or whatever. This was just like, what do you call it? Like necessity. What's that phrase? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we wanted to buy this property and we had to figure out how to make that happen. And so this is what we did. We ended up, it was a seller actually from my church who wanted to sell it to me. And so I've been talking to them and kind of building that relationship for years. And then when I found out they had a property to sell, I jumped on it and we agreed on a price, and it was a great price. And they said that they could probably carry the financing on it. I said, great, seller financing. I don't have to go to the bank. But the property needed a lot of money in repairs. It probably needed at least $100,000 in repairs, maybe more. If I were to hire it all out, maybe a couple $100,000 if I hired it all out. I didn't have that. They wanted a down payment, a small one of $15,000 just to cover the closing costs of the sale. They didn't want to have to pay money to get out of it. I didn't have that either. I was broke when I got this. So I didn't have that. Anyway, so I had all that going in. So I'm like, how do I make this happen? So what I did is I did a lease option, a triple net lease option on the property for the first 6 months. And so what I did is we worked out a deal where I said, I will rent the property from you guys, the 24 unit. I'll rent the whole 24 unit from you for $2,000 a month. And this was actually his idea. The seller is one that when I said, I don't know how I can make this happen, he said, well, let's try this. So I paid them $2,000 a month for the first 6 months on a lease option. And I paid all the expenses. I managed everything. It was basically my property. But they still technically owned it. During that time, I used it to fix up about a dozen, well, I don't know, probably half a dozen units during that first 6 months. Like I quit my job. Like I didn't have a job at that point. So I was in there every day working on the units, fixing one up to another, and slowly built up the income during those months and started saving money as well. But now I didn't have any money for the repairs, but I needed to fix up these units. So what am I going to do? So that's when I called up my dad again, who had lent on the first deal. And I said, I've got this really fantastic opportunity, but I'm going to need quite a bit of money for it. Are you interested? He's like, well, I don't have, that much money. I said, I need about 60 grand. He's like, because I'm going to do all the work myself. So all I need is material. He said, well, I don't have that much. And I'm like, okay, well, you have a line of credit on your house, a home equity line of credit? He said, sure. He said, well, why don't we just use that? Okay. So what I did is I did a triple net lease option on the property. I used a partnership that I formed, a 50-50 partnership with my dad, using a home equity line of credit to fix it up. And then we went and then we went and officially bought it using seller financing. And so there were 4 different creative techniques that people use: home equity line of credit, a partnership, triple net lease option, and seller financing, all wrapped into one gigantic 6-month purchase. And then 5 years later, now it's been about 5 years, I went and took to a bank, a local portfolio lender, refinanced it with the portfolio lender into a 25-year mortgage, paid off the seller financing. So now officially I've done 5 different techniques to get that property. Paid my dad out. Yeah, paid my dad off completely with the refi. So now it's just me on it. And it's now my property that I bought with pretty much no money down. It just took a long time to put that together. So anyway, that's the long, complex story. And I'm sure nobody followed along with that, but that's what it was.
It kind of makes sense. No.
Yeah, it was very, very big. But here's what the great part about that is. And I don't even care if people listening, don't listen to that for the here's what you should do, because you should not do that. People listening should not do that strategy, because that worked. That's probably the one time in human history that one strategy has worked, right? The point is, the more things that you can figure out how to do and the more persistent you are, the more successful you'll be. I use this analogy all the time of a toolbox. So if you imagine you have a toolbox and you have one tool in there, you have a hammer. That is it. And you go, what can you do with that hammer? Well, you can hit people with it. You can maybe pound it in a nail if the nail's already there, but you don't even have a nail. So if you have a hammer and nails, now you can do a few more things. If you have a hammer, nails, and a saw and a pile of wood, well, now you can do a lot more things. And then you got a drill, and now you can do even more. And so the more tools that you have, the more projects you can build. And so the same thing applies to real estate. The more tools you have, the more techniques and strategies you learn about, the more projects that you can take on. So that's my kind of tool analogy.
Nice. No, it makes a lot of sense, because there's no one way to buy real estate. Like you said, every market's different. So, you don't even know if what you're doing in your area doesn't work in my area.
Yep.
Your lenders are different. If you're using local lenders, they're going to have different terms and different rates and different guidelines than my lenders are going to have. And then it's just, everything's different. So you got to take each instance and look at it by itself and figure out the best way to do it.
Yep.
And speaking of lenders, how long have you used your portfolio lender, and how did you find them?
Sure. So I've been using my portfolio lender now for probably 6 years now, maybe something like that, 7 years. The actual first deal we ever did with them was that first flip that I couldn't sell. We had it with hard money for a couple of years, and then we couldn't sell it. We rented it out. We had it with hard money, and then we needed to refinance it. So I went to a couple of banks. Everyone said, no, you don't have a job. What are you trying to do refinancing the property? And then somebody said, well, why don't you try this one bank? They're a portfolio lender. I'm like, well, what's a portfolio lender? And they're like, well, it's a bank that doesn't sell all their mortgages up to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which means they can be a little bit more flexible with their lending. It's all just basically a person somewhere or a committee that's local to your area will make this decision whether they want to do it or not. And I said, great. So we did it. That worked out amazing. And I've used them probably a dozen times since on just various projects.
And yeah, I've got a portfolio lender here, and I've just got my 16th rental under contract.
Nice.
I'm up to 2.5 million in loans with them, because I do my fix and flips too. And they kind of okay, hold on a second. We've got to, reevaluate everything at that threshold. So I think they'll keep lending to me, but I don't know for sure. We'll see how it goes. I have to get my taxes done for 2014, which I always like to do at the last minute. No, a portfolio lender is such an awesome tool to use because once you get to 4 mortgages in your name, most big banks they'll just tell you can't do it. Chase, no, you can't do it. And it's not true you can't do it. They just won't do it.
Exactly.
And then a few other lenders might do 4 to 10, but then you're going to put 25% down. You're going to have higher rates. You can't do a cash out refinance. Very restrictive. Portfolio lender is a completely different story. So I mention that as much as possible. If you can find a portfolio lender, it'll make your life so much easier.
Yeah, well, definitely.
You're still buying properties, right? I saw your goal. You want 100 units. Is that right?
So it's kind of changing in that before I wanted 100 units. But then I read this book, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. We had him on the podcast, the Bigger Pockets podcast a while back. And I read this book, The 10X Rule. And his whole philosophy is whatever your goal is, multiply it by 10. And then try to hit that goal. Because even if you fall short on that one, you're still way further than you were the original goal, right? So if I wanted 100 units and I work really hard at that, I might get 100. If I work really hard at 100, maybe in the next 10, 20 years, I'll get 100 units or 5 years, whatever. But if my goal was 1,000 units and my mind was wrapped around that goal, well, then I would think differently. I'd act differently. I'd work differently, and everything would be different because I'd be trying to hit that goal. And what if I only hit 50% of that goal? If I only got 500? Well, it's still 5 times farther than I would have if I would have done my other one. So it's a mindset thing. So anyway, so 100 units, yeah, that's my goal. But now I'm kind of thinking I need to start aiming for 1,000.
Nice.
Because of that. So yes, but I still buy. But right now, I've slowed down quite a bit. I buy 1 or 2 properties a year now, maybe a multi. Like this year, in the past 6 months, I've only bought 1 single family house, just because the market's drying up a little bit, and I've been overwhelmed with Bigger Pockets stuff. And I published a book last year, and I'm writing another one right now. And so those things just took way too much time, which are lousy excuses, I know, but I'm human too.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's awesome. I listened to that podcast too, and I've paid a lot of attention. I listened to his audiobook. I didn't read the book, but
that's what I did too. I listened to the audio of it. Yeah.
It takes me so long to read. I
like the audiobook.
Listen to it. Yeah. But no, I love his attitude. I kind of did the same thing when I first started. I wanted to get 20 properties. I'm like, okay, that'd be an awesome goal to get 20. And I realized, I could do that. I can see myself doing that pretty easily given enough time. I need to make it 100. So then that's when I bumped my goal up to 100. And you say that, maybe I need to increase my goal now.
1,000 houses.
Right.
1,000 houses.
But no, our market is nuts here. We had the highest appreciating market in the country.
I heard
Colorado. That. And we're still finding some deals, but it's tough and inventory is so low. So I know what you're talking about with the market drying up for sure. I saw you mention something on one of your pages about partnering and how you love to partner with people on your deals. How do you make that work, and how has that helped you kind of go faster than you could have without it?
Sure. So I like partnerships a lot because partnerships are like, a puzzle piece. Like everybody has something that they don't have, right? And somebody else will have that part that you don't have, and you can fit those together like a puzzle. And so, what's the word? Like ideally partnerships are perfect. Now they never actually work out ideally. There's there's emotion involved in people, and you have to be careful. But the great thing about partnerships is that, people, if you're lacking something, they might have it. For example, I generally in my entire career have lacked capital. I don't have the money to go buy all the deals that I want to. So what I've done a number of times is I've partnered with people who want to invest in real estate. Let's call them Bob. I like to call them Bob, right? So Bob is an individual who loves the idea of real estate. He's busy though. He works a full-time job. He's got good money, good credit. The bankers love him because he's like a perfect borrower. He's got a perfect credit score, whatever else. But he has no time to invest in real estate. He doesn't read the books. He doesn't study on Bigger Pockets. He doesn't listen to podcasts like this. He's just likes the idea of it. So what I did is I partner with Bob and I say, look, why don't you bring the down payment? I'll bring my knowledge, experience, and the deal, and we'll put it together and we'll buy something cool. And so essentially he's just almost like a private lender, but he's got an equity in it. So I've done that a number of times with different people and kind of work these together. So I bought a triplex with one, a duplex with another, a single family with another. And so we buy these properties together. And the great thing about that is when you go to get a loan at the bank, they're going to look at the partner's amazing income and amazing credit and amazing everything. They say, oh yeah, no problem. And even if I'm on the loan, sometimes I'm not even on the loan. Sometimes I've just been like, we're both on title and only one person's on the loan. And some banks are okay with that. My portfolio lender, no problem. Right. Because it doesn't affect. Now, some banks will be like, no, that's not allowed, but those are usually the big ones. Portfolio lenders don't care who's necessarily on the mortgage as long as at least one person can qualify. So yeah, that's worked out pretty well for me. and now each of those are their own little like income streams, right? Like, me and Bob one can sell our property and then buy something else together. And then we can sell that property someday and buy something else. Or we can take the cash flow and roll it into another one. And then me and Bob two can go and do that same thing over there, and Bob three. And so I have these multiple avenues that, I'm only getting 50%, but I didn't put any money in to begin with. So they're able to all grow kind of independently of each other. And hopefully, 20 years from now, I'll have half a dozen partnerships that are all millions of dollars in value on each. And even if one didn't go as well as it should have, I still got a bunch of others that I can look towards.
No, that's great. 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing, for sure.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly.
if you don't have the money, then it's better to take a cut and get someone else involved. When you have how do you structure? Are all your properties in LLCs? How do you structure all your entities with that many units and properties?
Sure. Yeah. Right now they are. Right now they're all in LLC. So I buy them in my personal name and then I transfer them into an LLC, which there's some danger in doing that, in that you could trigger the due on sale clause, which all mortgages say that if you sell the property, they can take it back. And obviously, I'm not selling it, but banks can say that an LLC transfer counts as a sale and they can get mad about that. I've never had that happen to me. A buddy of mine did, though. He actually transferred into an LLC. The bank emailed or sent him a letter and said, "You sold the property, you owe us some money." He said, "Oh, no, I didn't." And they're like, "Yep, you did." So he's like, "Okay, fine." So he went and transferred it back to his personal name, and then they were okay with it. So there is some danger and risk in doing that. Personally, I'm okay taking that risk, knowing that I've got good equity in all my deals. If I ever had to, I could find a private lender, a hard money lender, another portfolio lender, whatever, to cash me out. If again, that worst case scenario, the bank came and said, "We don't like that you transferred this, and we're not going to let you transfer it back." So anyway, I did that. I bought the property with a personal name. I went to my lawyer and said, "Please just take care of this for me." And he did it, transferred an LLC, took care of it for, I don't know, it was $1,500 or something like that. Now, of course, my people listening, don't just assume that you should do the same thing. Talk to your lawyer, CPA, all that good stuff, because it's different for everybody. I mean, that's just what my lawyer, my CPA told me in my condition to do. Yours might be different.
Yeah, no, I do the exact same thing. So, cool. And my portfolio lender doesn't care that it's in an LLC.
Yep.
So they'll even lend to an LLC if I want them to.
Mm-hmm. But mine will too.
Yeah. A lot of it, I think some people in Colorado, it's really cheap to do an LLC. It's like $5 a year or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. It used to be $50 a year and they lowered it to $5. I don't know why.
Wow. I didn't know. Mine's like $300 or something like that a year.
Really? Yeah. So I'm like, and people ask me, "Why do you do an LLC when it's so expensive?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's like $500 a year." I'm like, "Oh, yep. Well, if it's $500 a year, maybe I'd think about, if it's worth it or not, and just do an umbrella policy or something else with it."
Exactly. That makes sense. So
you want to buy 1,000 properties. You're at 43 now. You're using your partners. You've got your portfolio lender. Do you have a time frame for when you want to get to 1,000, or is it just kind of like a sometime in the future, hopeful type of thing?
It's kind of just sometime in the future. It really like, I don't know. I mean, like originally I said I just wanted to like retire. I wanted enough units that I could retire, and then I got enough units that I didn't really, it paid my bills, and so I'm like, okay, well that's good. I probably should have a timeline like when I want to achieve it, but it's hard to predict the market, right? So like the market was crazy good a few years ago, and I bought 40 some units over the past half a decade or whatever, and then now the market's a little bit slower, so a little bit heating up, so I'm gonna buy slower, and then when the market tanks again, man, I'm gonna jump in and buy so much during that time. And so I kind of have to time it with the market. But ideally, if I had to pick 20 years, I'll be, what am I now? I just turned 30. So by the time I'm 50, if I had 1,000 units, I think I'd be pretty happy.
I think you'd be set up pretty good.
I think I'd be set up pretty good.
Yeah. Nice. So now besides the real estate you mentioned, you wrote a book.
I did.
You've been going crazy with Bigger Pockets. So, I mean, talk about your book, talk about what you're doing outside of the rental properties now with Bigger Pockets, and how that's been changing over the last year or so.
Sure. So I wrote a book called, actually, let me start with this. I started writing a book on rental properties because I love rental properties and that's like my bread and butter, so I started writing a book on it. And then chapter 2 was on the financing side of it. And as I wrote it, I wrote chapter 1, and then as I got to chapter 2, I just kept writing and kept writing and kept writing. And that chapter 2 turned into like a 50,000 word chapter. And I'm like, that's an entire book. So I just took it out. And last year we published the book on investing in real estate with no and low money down. And it's been phenomenal. It's been selling a ton. It's one of the top books in the real estate category on Amazon consistently. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. People can get it at biggerpockets.com/no money. And it's really it's been cool. So anyway, so that was done. That sold. It's still selling. It's still out there. And then I decided to pick back up the original book, which was the book on rental property investing, title to be determined, but that's probably what it's going to be called. And that's written now. And that one's actually 3 times as long as the other one. It was almost 150,000 words by the time I finished it.
That's
a big book.
Yeah.
So I'm paring it down. And then my wife, who is amazing, she is writing, we're kind of co-writing the book on rental property management, also named To Be Determined. And so we figured why not come up with 2 books at once, one on rental properties, one on management, do it together. And so combined, it's 250,000 some words now of real estate. Wow. I know that'll be out in months from now. I don't know when, but
I've self-published a few books, and it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So tell me, what's it like writing a book from scratch all the way through editing? I mean,
yeah, it's intense. Well, here's what's funny. No, I never realized. I never realized how much work goes in after the book is published. I mean, or after the book is written, right? So I thought if I could just write the book, that's it. No, I mean, I can write the book in 3 months. It took a year, almost, 9 months to publish the other one after I finished the writing, because it's everything else, the cover, the editing, the promotion, the whole thing just takes forever to do. That's why I say it's months down the road. Even though I wrote the book already, the newest one, it'll be months before I ever see it. But I learned a really cool technique for writing the book this time. I don't really learn, but I did a cool technique. I did this thing called the 100-Day Challenge from Gary Ryan Blair. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I have.
Okay, so I did that, and it was good. It was really good for me. It was like a couple $100 to take this course, and every day I'd get an email and have to answer these questions and walk my way through it. And I mean, yeah, the lessons maybe were a little bit cheesy. I mean, maybe things that you already know, like motivational stuff. However, what that did is it forced me every day to look at my goals, to work on those goals, and to strive towards something for 100 days straight. So what I did is I took my book outline that I wanted to write. I divided it up into 100 sections, very, very detailed. I spent 5 hours just outlining. And then I had my entire book outlined. So then every day I just wrote, I told myself I had to write 1,000 words a day. That was just my goal. 1,000 words every day for 100 days, and I'll have a book done. And so I actually averaged 13 or 1,400 words during that time, or 1,500 words every single day. I never missed a single day. And so it made it very, very easy to write compared to the previous book, which took me a lot longer because I didn't have that.
Wow, that's cool. No,
yeah.
I'm a big goal-oriented person too. I'm always got my goals. The hardest part about them is just making yourself look at them, review them, and just, you do it once a week, you do it, but it's if you do it every day, that's where you really see those results and things start to change, because you're always thinking about them. You're always just making constant improvements.
Yep. And what's funny about that? So I did this course, right? And it was, a couple $100 or whatever. And it was, one of the most well worth it things I've ever done. I mean, I had a lot of goals: real estate ones, personal ones, financial ones, relationship ones. And I hit almost every single goal I had, or very, very close. And I had pretty big goals set. I mean, it just totally transformed my life in 100 days. I mean, completely. So then I got done with it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's done. I did the course. I mean, they were like, you should do it again. I got these emails from them saying you should do it again. I'm like, I did it though. Now I know every day I'm going to work on my goals. I don't though. I don't do it. Right. It was something about being a part of that thing that made me work on them. And I don't know. I need to work on either pay the couple $100 and do it again or whatever. Again, it wasn't even the content. It was the act of doing it every single day.
Yeah. Well, no, actually we talked about this before, but I took Jack Canfield coaching.
Yep.
And goals were a huge part of that. They told me, every single night you have to spend 15 to 30 minutes reviewing your goals, just kind of reviewing your day, whatever, no exceptions. And when I was in that program and I had someone I had to be accountable to, I did it. I did it the whole time. And then once the program is over, it's like, oh, I don't need to do that tonight. Oh, I'll do it. And it just, you have to have that accountability to get it, to really get going on those things.
Yeah, you really do.
Now, for those of my listeners who don't know about Bigger Pockets, I'm guessing there's very few of them, but it's a real estate investing website that was started, was it about 10 years ago now?
Yeah, I think it's been 10 years since Josh started it.
Yeah. And, it was a great resource for me when I first got online and was looking at different investing techniques. How did you get started with Bigger Pockets, and kind of what are you doing right now with them?
Sure. So my journey with BP actually started, long before I started working there, and that I found the site when I bought my first house. I bought that very first one, and I didn't really know anything other than that my real estate agent said it was cheaper to buy than rent. And so I lived in the house, and then I realized that I could sell the house and flip it and make some money. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do that. So, and then I started reading some real estate books. I think I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm like, man, real estate investing, that sounds like an ideal career. So I called up my parents and told them I wanted to invest in real estate for a career for the rest of my life. I was going to go to law school. I had been studying for the test. I took the LSAT. I was all prepared to go. I was like applying to law school. And that's when I decided, I was like, I'm not going to go to law school. I read like a couple of John Grisham books about like, the firm and all these like terrible lawyer like stories. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like fun. I want to be a real estate investor. So I told my parents that. They said I was crazy and that if I bought rental property, my tenants would never pay rent and I would lose everything and I'd be like homeless. So I'm like, well, that doesn't sound fun. So I went on online. I think it was Dogpile or Google or whatever was the search engine back then. And I typed in what to do when tenants don't pay rent. And the first article came up with the site BiggerPockets, and it was very young. And it was a year or two old at the time. And I started kind of clicking around and I read this article and it was amazing that there were like answers to all these questions that I had. Everybody has like an uncle who invested in real estate and lost their shirt. Everyone's got like that story right. So like I realized that there was the other side of that coin, that there are people who are succeeding with it. There's a whole community of them. At the time, there was 10 or 15,000 people or whatever on the site. Today there's 300,000 or something like that. So anyway, that's when I started just like being a member and reading articles. And then a couple of years later, I started, getting a little more involved. And then a couple of years after that, I started writing articles for them because I like, just like you were doing, right? Guest blogging and writing articles. And then I became friends with the CEO, Josh. And then one day he put on his Facebook wall, he said, hey, I'm looking for someone to help take over the writing the articles, like managing the articles. And I said, wow, that sounds kind of fun. I was kind of doing it anyway with my own blog. I had a small blog at the time and I was doing it anyway. So I said, I'll do it. And then that just kind of morphed into me being what today I'm VP of marketing and communications or some, BS title, but yeah, who knows? But I mean, basically I'm like the I don't know, number 2, is that the right word? I don't know. Me and Josh just kind of work together. I mean, it's fun. So that's today I just do whatever needs to be done. I do weekly webinars. I teach real estate. I write stuff. I write articles, or I write for entrepreneur.com now and a few other things like that. So
nice. Yeah. No, so cool. You guys started a new podcast with what was that? Just like asking beginning questions, right? How's that been going?
Good. Yeah, it's called Ask BP. It's just a daily podcast that comes out. Just people ask questions about real estate and we'll just answer them. And so it's me and then 2 other people are doing them right now. Scott and Mindy, who are both BiggerPockets employees. We just kind of take turns answering questions and try to hit 5 a week. And hit Monday through Friday. It comes out. So yeah, it's awesome. I like it a lot because the podcasts are great. Like this one, and we've been talking what now, a half hour or whatever. And it's like, a lot of people love that, but some people don't have time for it. Some people just have 5 or 10 minutes on their quick commute to work. So the Ask BP one is like a way to quickly listen, 5 minutes, 10 minutes every single day. It ties in perfectly with that idea of the motivation, right? That every day doing that one thing and being reminded to get out there and work on your goals and stuff like that. And so I think that's probably why it's seen a lot of success, is that people just like that everyday thing.
No, well, I think, you've been very impressive in your investing, in your writing, especially. I mean, you put out a lot of articles, a lot of books, and I saw you writing for Entrepreneur too, which is something else to add onto your plate. I know how time consuming it can be.
Yeah. Well, likewise, you were always pumping out content. You were like one of the more prolific bloggers I know. So
yeah, the writing part's the easy part. It's the editing. It's all the other parts that make it hard. So, well, yeah, great. I think that's all I've got for this show. Thank you so much for being on it. Yeah, anything else you want to add? Any great tips for beginning investors or experienced investors out there before we end it?
I'll end it the same way that I end every Ask BP episode, is that I say this, in pursuit of your goals, don't just learn, but like take action. Don't just learn, take action. People spend so much of their time listening to podcasts and learning, and that's great. But there's some point where people have to just go out there and do something and take some action. And so that's just my encouragement for the listeners today is, take something you learned today, anything at all that you learned today, one thing if that is, and go out and apply it somewhere in your life.
No, that's great. A lot of the people I've interviewed before, their first deal, they totally screwed it up. Yep. I mean, it didn't go well and they didn't give up. They didn't break them. It made them better in the end. So no, great advice. Thanks a ton for being on the show. And yeah, we'll include links to your book and BiggerPockets and all kinds of everything we talked about on the page. So Thanks a lot.